Okay, so welcome. Was there anything top of mind that anybody wanted to discuss? Do we want to do? I think everybody's been to these meetings before. Nelson, I remember you from previous meetings, so I don't know if we need to spend a whole lot of time with introductions, unless people. Well, everybody else knows each other. Nelson, why don't you introduce yourself again, just so we remember what your involvement is with Koha?
Okay. I have a long, slow-moving project to connect to service small, special library collections around the country and maybe around the world that are English language. And I've managed since the last meeting to install koha on a Linode. It's now visible to the world, and have loaded bib records in. And anyway, so I'm really interested to slowly sort out how to do this.
Well, I don't know if we met. I'm George Williams. I'm the NEKLS Search Catalog Coordinator in Northeast Kansas Library System in Lawrence, Kansas. So,
hi, George. Thank you. Yeah, nice to meet you.
So is there a particular, with your project, Nelson, is there a particular point where you're getting stuck with anything now, or is it just because it's the nature of it being slow moving?
It's both. So I actually have a group that has said, you know, we want to try this with you. So they sent me their PDF of their books, and I'm trying to I'm kind of stuck more on MarcEdit right now, frankly, and use of the regular expressions. So it's not exactly a Consortia kind of thing. But then I also have another project that services an association for doctors. And so I'm split between whether to try to make PDFs, articles, professional medical articles available across, and maybe some audio recordings across Koha, or maybe use DSpace. So another thing I'm thinking of doing is trying to figure out how to install DSpace, and then, you know, cover it with a website of some sort, which is why I've been so interested in Aspen, but that seems to be unreachable at this point.
Yeah, I think that would be, I don't think there's many libraries that have self-installed that at this point. But that would be the way to go. Yeah. I mean, that would definitely be able to pull in all those things if that could get figured out.
Right. So I had a really great time. Lauren and I and Fred King and I had a conversation since our last meetings, and I've been kind of looking at other sites as reference points for what could be done. How could it look? But unfortunately, Lauren's situation didn't include DSpace. It was another sort of proprietary thing that I wouldn't be looking into.
Cool. Well, thanks for the update on the project.
Yeah, sure.
Looks like we have somebody else joining us. Hi, Jana. Welcome to the Consortia Special Interest Group meeting. We were just talking with Nelson about a project he's working on with Koha. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I am Jana Prock. I'm director of the Keller Public Library in Texas, and I am also with the MetroShare Consortium public libraries.
Cool. And what brings you to discuss Consortia today?
Well, I wanted to listen to what other people were doing, okay. I generally report on it at our meetings, and we don't really have an agenda for today of what we were wanting to find out.
Okay, that's no problem.
That's
like,
cool. We don't have an agenda either.
Yeah, it's kind of loose and seeing what people come. I do have a couple things I was thinking would be worth discussing. I don't know if I'm sure if libraries aren't on 2011 yet, they will be soon. I know we're going August 1st, so that's right around the corner, and we have it on our test server. So I thought that would be good to see if people are migrating to that version soon, or if they have, and any experiences either through testing or through actual experience that they've come up against with that.
The experience I've had so far on our test server is we have not all of our staff members have, let me pull up, I don't remember what the name of the permission is. There's a permission for circulation and for well, let me just find the name of it. So the interface for searching for borrowers in checkout and the interface, the search results when you do a search in the check-in box used to be you'd go to check-in and you'd run a search, and it was a check-in search or checkout search. When you search for a patron's name, when you've got the tab set to checkout, it did one search, and then when you're doing search patrons, it does a different search. Those were two differently executed searches, and somebody said, why do we need to have two separate searches there? And so they're one search now. So when you do a checkout search, it's executing the same search as a patron search. And if you have any staff members, I have some staff members that their only circulation permission is circulate remaining permissions, and their their add, modify, and view patron information is only set to view borrower info from any libraries. So they don't have edit borrower's permission. And if you don't have edit borrower's permission, you can no longer do any patron search by name unless you have edit borrowers. So let me actually log in with one of these patrons and show you what I mean. So, and I'll share my screen once I.
Seems like a classic fix something and it messes up, and then it ties it to a permission you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, and I'll find the bug number for this too. So let me log in.
An easy oversight too, because I mean, with our libraries, you know, if we have access to the patron accounts, you know, you have access to edit, and it's like we don't have that kind of a granular access.
Yeah, we have mostly that's what we have. Mostly that's what I have is I'm trying to open this.
We're set up the way Christopher described, where if you're doing check-in and check-out, we have you permissions to edit the borrower, even if they're very limited. I don't think we have anybody that has lower permissions than that.
Yeah, we have a few, because what we have is we have some libraries that use a lot of volunteers at the circulation desk. In particular, some of the really poor libraries, and you know, I have a couple of libraries. Their budget is, you know, less than $20,000 a year, and so they rely heavily on volunteers to do stuff.
Do you have volunteers that have access to patron information?
Well, no, because they don't have that permission. They can look up a patron and they can check things in and out, but if you don't have edit borrowers, you can't see their address. All you can see is what they've got checked in and what they've got checked out. You don't see any other information about the borrower. So here, I've got this pulled up now with
which kind of makes sense. I mean, if you can't, you know, there has to be some, I mean, if you're trying to establish a role that can, you know, do that check in and check out, but they're not allowed to, you know, to go beyond that, then, you know, should they see more information about a patron? So I can kind of see where, you know, that's getting a little muddy in those permissions and why they chose that division. Maybe that was purposeful.
See, if I scan a card, it'll take me to that account and I can check things out, and I can go up here and I can check things in, but I don't see any contact information. I mean, this is all you see when you just have that one permission. The problem is if I'm here and I go to if I go to checkout and I type in, I'm going to get this, when you do a checkout search now, you get this error message, you do not have permission. So this puts, you know, one of the libraries where I have that this is most commonly used is at the school libraries, because we have school libraries where they have students that work in the library that, you know, they're the student aides. And so you don't want the students to have access to the other students' information. And so that's where I have this most commonly. And the students at those schools don't have library cards. So you can't just expect the student to come in and scan their library card, because they don't actually have them. You have to look them up by name. And so all of those student aides are not going to be able to access that. And there is a bug on Bugzilla, and I'm not going to be able to find it now.
Are you going to do, for the time being, are you going to do some sort of jQuery workaround, give them?
Yeah, I'll find a way to work around it, because I always do. This isn't my first time of working around a problem.
I can see how you can probably, you know, target specific accounts, you know, say, okay, we have to give them edit permissions, but we're going to get rid of this stuff so that they can't mess with anything.
So let's see. There is a bug, and there are only two people on this bug right now. Or maybe not. Maybe there's more. Oh, that's a different one. That's a different one related to edit borrowers.
So George, the way we do a lot of those school situations, because we don't have it, and this is not a perfect solution, but because we often don't have library staff in our schools either. It's just having a permanent person in the library is really rare in rural places. So we do the self-checkout machine.
Yeah, we do that too.
Through the OPAC, but they have to put in the full card number. Now they know our student IDs are typically based on the barcode, but then we do a pad prefix. So they have to type that in as well. So that's a little bit of an annoyance, but it works, and we have a number of schools doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll find a way to work around this, at least temporarily. That's the bug number there, but if more people could comment on that, I'd appreciate it. And essentially what it says is search for patrons in checkout should not require edit borrower's permission. I mean, Andrew wrote that bug, and it certainly, that sums it up pretty well. So if it only affects me, I understand, but I imagine it's going to affect more people as more people move to this version.
Yeah, I can see how that can be an issue depending on your system and your policies and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, searching for somebody should not be hindered by editing. Yeah.
And the reason that I imagine one of the reasons that edit borrowers, you know, in the patron search, you have the address information there on the screen. But in the checkout search, in the older versions, all you have is the name and the card number.
I do like the direction that they went. You know,
yeah,
everything makes sense with how they're going. and why have two different search mechanisms when you can have one that's consistent? And in fact, on some bug somewhere, I may have chimed in on that and said, you know, when you search for a patron here, it looks different than when you search for a patron here. Why is it, you know, coming up with different information? And it's like, you know, why not make something more consistent? So I might have contributed to that move, but you know, it makes sense. But yeah, searching should not be hindered.
Well, there was also an issue with the checkout search for patrons, because if you type in like the letter S, it's going to get you the table wasn't a data table. It was just a set of results. I mean, a search for the letter S would get you every borrower that has an S in their account, which was too many results. I had it set up. I had some jQuery in there that limited that search to a minimum of, I think, 3 characters in order to keep from getting those. I mean, we have like 115,000 borrowers, so it would limit those to a reasonable number of results. But the patron search has always been a data table, so you only see the first 20 results by default.
Right.
So I think that was part of the reason that was a switch too. I think that was the initial thing that triggered that change. So
I think other than that, I've been doing tests with our test server and haven't run into many issues. The cover flow was initially one thing, and it seemed like there was one other issue that was pretty minor, but this was a fairly smooth transition.
Yeah, and there weren't that many changes.
Nothing major.
Yeah, nothing major. I think for us, like we try to do as much testing as we can, but until you can't recreate like the world in which there's so many transactions happening in a given time period. That's usually just the tonnage of transactions is usually where, if we're going to get tripped up, it's just something goes super slow all of a sudden that used to work better. So we'll be looking forward to seeing if we get hit with one of those, but I don't think they messed with too many things that should affect that. One of the things I'm looking forward to future releases, we have a ticket up because our holds load so slow when we have a lot of items on a particular record. So something like a Harry Potter book has like 70 items on it. It's like something from a couple versions ago changed the way that loaded, and it went really slow. And there's like 6 different bugs that they're working on to try to speed up performance, and none of those were in this release, but hopefully some of them will get backported and we could get them in a point release down the road. So that's still probably one of our biggest issues that this update isn't solving.
So you guys aren't staying a year behind on the long-term whatever, right? You're moving towards the current release.
We're about 6 months behind typically.
6 months.
Yeah, I can tell you kind of the history of that. When I started working with Bywater in 2012, they were, as soon as there was a new version, Bywater was putting all their customers on a new version. And then it was after that, we migrated to Koha in 2012, and I think it was the second upgrade that we did. And I'm sure Christopher remembers this, or you might have stopped it. I think Christopher and I used to be in systems that were just like 90 miles apart, and we always took turns. One of us would go first, and then if there were any serious problems, we would call each other and say, "Whoa, tell him to stop. tell him you want to wait a couple of months." But there was a release of Koha that we were upgraded to like a week or two after it hit. I don't remember which release it was, but all of a sudden the grace period stopped working on all of our finds. And so every morning I would go in and I would run a report that identified, which grace periods were inappropriately skipped. And then I forgave a whole ton of fines every day. And what happened is Bywater realized that, even though there was some testing going on, they weren't catching, they were having these major problems with their customers. So the way that Koha goes now is that there's Master, which is the cutting edge, most recent version that hasn't been finished yet. Then there's Stable, and then there's Old Stable, and those are the supported releases. And Bywater keeps all of their customers on Old Stable because it's more stable than stable.
It's been out
Old
long
Stable
enough
is
that
more
they've been able
stable
to
than
fix
stable,
things.
yeah. So Bywater is always usually about 6 months behind with almost all of their customers.
And I've liked that model a lot.
Yeah.
It's been less stressful than trying to go on something that's more cutting edge.
Yeah, so the version that we're about to upgrade to is what, 2111?
Yeah.
So the current version is 2205, and we're upgrading to the version before that. And then sometime after 2211 comes out, then Bywater will start upgrading all their customers to 2205. Generally, that's helped us avoid any serious problems like that. I was really unhappy when I had to run a report every morning, 7 days a week, to identify grace periods that had been skipped inappropriately.
And if you have them put together a test server for you, that's really helpful too, because they'll upgrade that in advance, and you can see any potential problems, especially with customizations that you need to work out prior to that. Because this new version, as I mentioned, that we're getting into, when they upgraded our test server, it broke our cover flow, so all our scrolling book covers on our main page broken. So they recognized, oh, we've got to upgrade the cover flow at the same time. So that was recognized. And then there was a modification that several of us have contributed to that condenses locations in a search results. And Jason just updated that code based on this last upgrade and fixed that. We made some improvements on that. So that's updated in the library, and I've got it working for both versions. So.
Do you find that you need to tweak things yourself with code, and then when the update comes, it's in place so you don't have to tweak it? Or
if you do any customizations, like in jQuery or CSS, it's always a good idea to check those things in advance, because some of it can stop working. Like the location compression modification that we did for search results broke because they updated some classes or labels inside the Koha base code, and what we were pointing at before was no longer valid. So we had to find a new way to point to those things. And so Jason went through and figured that out and updated it.
I see.
So
Bob, you mentioned something that kind of caught my ear about prefacing, I don't know if it was the borrower number or something with like a letter acronym or something. So what happens if in a consortium, if you have different locations or different branches where they have different requirements? Can you handle that variability within Koha, or do you have to do some kind of special coding?
So we're using, it's not a plugin. I wish it were a plugin. And I don't know if anybody else is using the barcode prefix thing, but it's like something that they have some code for that they just patch in. So typically, and I don't know, I think they're going to make it a plugin at some point, which makes it a little bit easier to manage than something that would be available if you're not like a Bywater customer. But what it essentially does is it allows you to put in a barcode prefix and set the length that you want a barcode. And we have to do that because we have libraries that migrate in that have like 5-digit barcodes. And we have like in that one group, we're managing essentially what's 2 different consortiums. But in that one, because we don't use it for the other group, but for the one group, we have like over 120 different branches. So we kind of need, like if you just are going 5-digit and you just leave it like that, you try to migrate stuff in, it's going to run against existing barcodes. So we have to do this prefixing thing and to make that all work.
Is that leading zeros? When you say prefix, you just put in 6
so
or 8.
We put
zeros?
in a 5-digit. We have a 5-digit prefix that starts with 3, and then it puts in the remaining zeros automatically. So when you're checking out something, it will automatically apply that prefix because in the system, the barcode says it's got 14 digits. It's got everything loaded in there, but the actual item just has like a 5-digit barcode. So when you go to check it in and you scan it, it'll automatically apply the prefix and that'll match up to what's in the system.
I see.
So we have to do that. And then because we resource share, anybody that's resource sharing, that doesn't work because if you bring that over to another branch, it'll apply a different prefix and it'll either not show the item as checked out, or it'll check out to the wrong item, something that's already in the system. So we tell libraries they have to rebarcode. And anytime we have a new library come in, we say, we understand rebarcoding all your items is a major project. We're not going to make you do that. But when you resource share, you have to slap on a 14-digit barcode, and that solves that problem.
So we actually told our libraries when they migrate, I wasn't here for most of these migrations, but the ones that did have short barcodes, we didn't say, we understand rebarcoding is a major project and we're not going to make you do it. We just said, we're going to make you do it.
Yes.
And I think that might be what you do too, isn't it, Jason? No,
we have the same setup and same special sauce as Bob, and they did tell me that they're working on turning that into a plugin as well, because they're like every time they add something and where you enter a barcode, it has to be added to that code. So like we've been working with the course reserves module and it doesn't support the course reserves module. So they think that turning it into a plugin will help it maintain those things better. But yeah.
We also went with a period where every time they did not just a major upgrade, but any of those like smaller point releases, if they forgot to put that bit of code in there, we would like a bunch of barcodes wouldn't work the next day. So that happened like 4 times, but we haven't had an issue with that for a while. But having a plugin would make it a lot easier, so they wouldn't have to have that do extra special stuff before they loaded it. But I think they've got that process locked down now.
There is a prefix plugin in 2111. Is that what you're referring to? We've already been upgraded 2111 and it is the barcode prefix. It's a plugin now instead of
so that's great. Yeah, I haven't even looked at that. We'll have to see if they transition this over to that plugin. Something to ask about.
Do you have a test server, Bob?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
So it'll be at least 6 months before you see that, right, Bob? Because you're 6 months behind.
Well, no, you said you're
this
upgrading.
Is the upcoming one. We're actually upgrading to that version next week.
Oh, the
And
2111. Oh, right. Got it. Yeah.
Another advantage of it being a plugin is that you can typically install those at any point. They do have like versions where they come in, but after that, anyone can pull them in and install them because it's sort of external and supposed to be neutral to the code.
So you can't have different conventions on the barcoding if one location has like AWSC-22003.
You could do that. We just try to stay consistent. We actually have one library that At most, I don't know how it is in other states. In Colorado, there's always a 5-digit prefix. It always, if it's an item, it starts with 3, and if it's a patron, it starts with 2. But the system doesn't enforce that. So we have a library where a vendor messed up their order one time, and so they have that backwards, and that's fine. We just put it in the 2 in the item place and the 3 in the patron place, and that all works fine. But that's just more of a thing that I don't know if that's other states do this, but we've tried to have consistent barcodes, and I actually have a database of all the different prefixes that are out there, which is good that I've done that to make that consistent, because we've just started using an interlibrary loan plugin that works with InReach, which is III's ILL system, because that's what we're using statewide now. So having those different prefixes has been key, because otherwise we'd be seeing errors with duplicate barcodes. So fortunately, I've made sure that every single library we've converted to this 14-digit has a unique prefix that is going to bump up against what these other libraries have been using for years.
Koha doesn't have any hard and fast rules about how long a barcode number has to be, or what it has to start with, or whether there has to be a checksum. But there are some system preferences you can turn on that require barcodes to be a minimum length or a maximum length. Koha's flexible that way, and I think there is even a checksum system preference. I was trying to look for it, and I couldn't.
And I think you can have letters in it as well, can't you?
Yeah, we have 51 libraries, and we have one standard library card that a lot of libraries just buy library cards from our office, and they're just kind of the standard card. But then I have some, and they always start with 1003. Yeah, but I have a lot of libraries. I have a couple of libraries that they have personalized cards, and so one of them, all their card numbers start with PLEA. Leavenworth, and it's PLEA as patron, LEA Leavenworth, and their items all start with ILEA, item Leavenworth. And I have other libraries that have similar conventions where their card numbers have a unique prefix, but they work fine alongside the other libraries that have a unique prefix, and alongside our system-wide 1003. So, but there is a way you can tell Koha that, the card numbers have to be this length, and they have to. There are ways you can use the system preferences in Koha to require those kinds of things if that's what you want. But generally, in a consortium, I find that unless you can get everybody on board on the first day that this is going to be our convention for how we build library card numbers and item numbers, you can't really do that in a consortium effectively.
I could show you what the plugin configuration looks like, if that would be helpful.
Sure, I'd love to see it.
So here's you put in the item barcode length here at the top, and then for each branch you have the item prefix and the patron prefix set. And then at the end, if you want to, you can add the patron barcode length also.
Interesting. So that works quite a bit differently than what Jason and I are using, because that's all done in the library, in the admin setting in the libraries. It just gives you a space where you can throw in the prefix. So it's not coded like this.
Yeah, I think this replaces that, because I checked our branches and they've removed the prefixes from the settings there. And what we did for our prefixes is we had 2 for the patrons and 3 for the items, and then the remaining four digits of their zip code for the
find
location.
It works better doing it all here in one place rather than doing it in the individual branches. It seems like it would make more sense to do it in the individual branches, but
it pretty much has the same functionality. It's just trading one place for another. It is kind of nice to see them all in one place. But again, yeah, if you're editing the individual branches, you do have to go here then.
Yeah, I just looked at our upgraded sandbox, and we are still using the other. We haven't transitioned to the plugin,
Oh,
so I don't know why, but I will look into it and talk to them about if that's something we should be doing.
So
All
do
right.
you have to use barcodes for items?
You have to have a unique barcode number anytime you're adding an item.
You could just like hand type a
Yeah,
a short code for the title or something, and that could be your barcode.
you could,
It's
As
unique.
long as it's unique.
as long as,
Unique.
yeah, that doesn't matter numeric or alpha or numeric or anything like that, or length, unless you're putting in those parameters like George was saying. But you do it does have to be unique. I find that like just having a barcode you can slap on there takes a lot of the thought out of it, so you don't run into issues as long as you're ordering your barcodes correctly and not doing an overlap. We've had issues with some libraries that do like vendor orders, and they haven't like told us that, and they've done like a barcode order and it's in the same range. So they get those like preloaded barcodes, like they load the mark file, and then there's issues because we haven't put them on a different range, which usually you can just do by just putting like replacing a 0 with a 1 up there, and or like a 3 or something like that, and that puts it on a range that they'll never get to that high of a number. But if they don't let us know that, then sometimes they have an unpleasant surprise.
It's always a good idea to have a different convention between your patron barcodes and your item barcodes, because we've seen some mix-ups with that too, if the barcodes are similar. So make sure that there's a good distinction between the two, because sometimes you'll be searching for a patron and you'll put in an item barcode and it comes up with somebody else, or vice versa. So it's always good to have those barcodes distinctly different.
So Koha doesn't enforce unique key on the barcodes.
It won't let you save a duplicate barcode. Well, we have some items that still don't have barcodes. I'm slowly trying to get people to add them. Barcodes, if you ever take the records out and then import them back in, I've discovered if it doesn't have a barcode, it tends to make a new item or record. And that could be, I just don't know how to do matching rules in Koha, but that tends to happen. And then the barcode allows you to modify batch records. So that's what I've loved the barcode. Like if I need to move these set of items from one shelving location to another, which happens quite frequently, then if it doesn't have a barcode, I'm stuck. I have to do it manually.
I see.
Or I have to run a report, find the
Item
number,
yeah,
and then modify it by the item number, which it's like, just add the barcode, then I don't have to worry about it. It's easier to find.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's good.
See, here's a lesson learned in Northeast Kansas. Somebody in 2008, when this library started using Koha, they said, hey, all of our item barcodes should start with 000. And the problem with that is anytime you export data into like any Microsoft product, it says those zeros are not significant, and it drops them. And it makes dealing with importing and exporting, it just makes it awful. So that's one of my pieces of advice is if you ever think about starting something with a 0, just don't.
Also, spaces. Don't
Yeah.
use spaces, because what Lauren was talking about with that being able to batch modify stuff, if there's a space in that barcode, it will read it as like a line break.
Yeah.
So it won't read the full thing. So avoid spaces.
And I think actually we have a library that does have some barcodes that item barcodes that have spaces in it. There is a system preference somewhere now to deal with spaces and barcodes, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Usually we are weeding those out because they're old materials. So those are the ones where we have to, yeah, we actually have to say, sorry, normally we just batch delete these for you, but because you've got this old barcode system with the space, there's not much we can do for you on this one. So you get to do it manually. But at some point we'll have cycled through both our short barcodes and any weird formats like that. Since everybody is buying new barcodes with just that standard 14 with their unique prefix.
Yeah, there is. I just put the and I sent it just to Michael. The system preference I was thinking of is barcode separators. There you go. Oh.
Can you save the chat this time?
Oh yeah, yeah. I will.
Okay, good.
I think you can actually. Can you do that? No. I think you can do that before you leave too. That might be more convenient.
Oh, okay, we'll do.
There's that the right in the chat. There's like a right into the right of the smiley face. There's a drop down menu, and then you should have the option
Save
to
chat. I see it. Yeah, thanks.
So,
And if you hit it right now, it'll catch everything moving forward until the meeting ends.
Great, got it.
And it might catch the things that we talked about at the conference committee meeing in the same room before this one started.
Yeah, sift through some of that. Anything else anybody wanted to talk about? I know I have one thing. If nobody else has a burning issue that I wanted to, run by the brain trust here and see what you all think about it.
I don't have an issue, but yesterday I just threw together something on our test server and then put it into production. But we had a staff member that was wanting to have staff record signups for a newsletter in a completely different thing other than Koha. And I said, hey, you know what? I can make a checkbox in there. We can do a patron, or not a checkbox, but a patron attribute where you can select, something and
do like a yes or no.
And so we created a patron attribute for that, and I created a list for it to choose what you want in the drop down. And so we did that, but then she said, oh, I want a date. I want to know when they selected that, when they turned that on. So, okay, so I had to create another patron attribute and had to I put some jQuery in there that said if they turn one of these values on, it puts today's date in this other field, and I didn't want people messing with that field, so I was going to hide it. Well, I found out you can't hide the patron attributes, or at least the by the list item, the LI, where it's all encompassed in. You can remove it, but you can't hide it. It's really weird. The .hide in jQuery doesn't work on it because Koha, now that they've been adding these special selects in their code where it's, you have this drop down and that part of the control you see, but there's a hidden field that it actually changes in the background. It's forcing things to show even if you tell it to hide. So hiding that list item, I could hide all the contents, which is the workaround I had to do. I had to end up hiding all the children of that list item in order to hide that particular field and all of its associated parts. which was annoying. But yeah, this was new to me. It's like I was scratching my head for the longest time and worked with Luke on that, and we found out what was going on. But no, we created this newsletter thing so people could opt in, and so now she can run a report and get the latest, live information about, who signed up for this, and blast out her newsletters to that group fairly easily without having to maintain an outside list somewhere. So
That's cool. We have for the other consortium we're running, we have that's in the prison libraries, we have to keep track of like user agreements that they sign. And so we have a yes or no, but there's also a feature we were able to enable that I had messed with before, where they can actually upload that signed agreement. And then because we're using an FTP to get a patron updates, because they move off at facilities fairly regularly, it'll update their address, but all that will go with them wherever they go, because they used to have to sign one of those every single time they move to a new facility. Now it sticks with them throughout. They just have to do it one time, which is pretty cool. And then they just have to and then whoever's looking can just visually check that attribute is marked as yes, and know that they're good to go, and they don't have to do any of that work. So that was a huge time saver for both those patrons and those libraries.
So did you say that you have they upload a signed form somewhere?
Yeah.
Where does it get uploaded to, and is it
into their patron record? There is a system preference where you can turn that on, and I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but yeah, you could upload like a PDF. Yeah, that files thing appears when you turn it on.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember the system preference, but yeah, we have it enabled in our system.
That was one of those where they asked if we could do that, and we're like, that sounds like a development, but now the feature was already there. We just had to turn on a system setting.
And so if you ever had to move all of those in batch, you would go behind the scenes and find the folder in Linux where Koha stores all those.
Well, because we're BioWater customers, we don't have
to deal with that.
Access to that sort of stuff. So
are those
would be
okay?
Are those files in the same look or similar fashion where you go to upload covers and things? Can you access that in the I don't know if it's the admin page or I think it's the tools page. Can you see those files from there?
Let me look.
I think so.
I don't think I've had the need to do so thus far.
I know those tools are just very rudimentary and they don't have any way of batch manipulation from within there. It would be nice down the road if they did have some more robust way of dealing with those files.
I'm looking at the tools. Maybe I'm just missing.
If you go to tools, upload at the very bottom of the upload tool, there's a search, and I'm not seeing what I expect to see when I do a search for. I don't think you can. I think those are stored somewhere else.
On the tools page, there's also an access files option.
That was empty when I went into that, so that is not it.
Yeah, I don't think those are stored in the same place. I think I know that they're stored somewhere in the MySQL or Maria database. I don't think they're stored on the server in Linux. I think they're stored actually in the database. So
All right, well, if y'all don't mind, I just want to run together my little plan. I think I've talked about this a few times where our holds is a bit of a mess and we're using that branch transfer limits. And I want to get away from it because like we were adding a new branch and I just had to create it. And because they're not lending yet, I had to go through every single item type and uncheck everything. And that was ended up being, you can do it while you're multitasking, but it took, over the course of 2 days to get that completed. So I want to get away from that. So one of the things that Jason had recommended is creating a non-lending DVD type. So that's one thing I'm going to try because one of our issues is reciprocity. Some libraries love DVDs, some don't, but we still have that issue where even if we do that, it would, if that's all we did, it would then allow, and then we drop the branch transfer limits, it would allow libraries that are using that to request on the request DVDs that don't have that non-lending type. Does that make sense, Jason? Like they could still put requests on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So like the way we're not doing it with DVDs, but we're doing it with new items. So I have one subset that everybody uses the same item type. So maybe that's the problem. So like everybody's using the new item type and then the rules are set so that only the libraries that are, so I don't know. I can show you my settings. Maybe that'll help illustrate it a little clearer.
So one of the solutions I had to that was to create library groups and use that function, because then you can actually set things so they have common rules. So I think I could set a library group that like lends DVDs on one that doesn't.
So the way I have it set up, like the overarching rules are fine. They're not included there. So that's saying everybody can share and borrow new items. But then when I go into one of my fish libraries, which are the non-sharers, my holds policies say only local people can place holds on those local items. But you're right, like the sharing libraries can still place holds on their new stuff too. There's just a delay. So, and I've got a little tooltip set up for those items that say items are delayed because this library doesn't share their new items. So yeah, you're right. There's still like a gap in there that you need to close.
So that's what I'm hoping that the using the groups will do, and setting it up so they can't lend. So we could sort that, and then those rules will be consistent.
Well, have you tried setting up like a system-wide rule that says non-lending DVDs not shared at all, and then go to the granular level on those libraries that do use them and set?
Well, I think that will work. The non-lending, we haven't done that yet. I think that will solve that problem, but we just have the problem that if I pull off the branch transfer limits, then I think that those libraries will be able to request DVDs still that are lending DVDs, because we're trying to enforce the reciprocity there. If it was just a matter of making them non-lending, that'd be fine. That would be hard at all. But we also have to enforce it so those libraries can't request other people's DVDs, because we told them it's not fair for you to hide your collection and then.
So for your regular DVD rule, can you set a policy that just says this library cannot borrow? Like in the holds policy a little higher up on the page.
So that's the problem with it, with the holds rules not being able to look at in both the patrons library and the items library. You're going to have an issue with one of those. And maybe if we made it look at made the holds rules look only at the items library, that would work. So that might be, but if it looks at the patrons library, then I think we still have that problem where it'll just follow those other rules that are set up differently.
I think you need a combination of different item types and different borrower types.
Yeah, I want to avoid the borrower type thing if possible.
Oh yeah, I would too. I would want to avoid the hell out of that. But I think that would, if you had like borrowers at sharing libraries and borrowers at non-sharing libraries, then.
So that's where I think using the library groups where we can have a lending group, a DVD lending
Yeah.
group and a non-lending group, because then we can have them follow the group rules for that.
Yeah.
I think that was the idea I had. And then the other issue we have is what do we do with schools that close? And I know that I think it was something Christopher put out there in an email exchange where just marking the pickup location off helps with that. So that might be, so I think that's something we can definitely start doing. So there's just a mess of all these different things, but I can report back. I'm going to take it step by step in our sandbox first and test and then see what we can come up with.
Yeah, and for libraries that close, I also always put them in the hidden items in the OPAC because that's always a problem. So this returns to the conversation of we need one central place for all of these settings.
Yeah.
Because it's 7 different places and 7 different things.
No, I'm gonna be doing a ton of work that might pan out to nothing, but I'm really motivated to not have to mess with branch transfer limits anymore. Because I was on vacation last week, and somebody who had like some work done on their building that wasn't resource sharing wanted to turn back on, and like the person on my staff looked at that and went, I know Bob showed me how to do this, but there's no way I feel confident in messing with any of this stuff because it's so complicated.
I just shared a link to a bug on Bugzilla that Christopher Brannon from Coeur d'Alene Library filed in 2014 about, gee, wouldn't it be nice if there was an easier way to shut down a library, like a school library for the summer? And this bug has been around for 8 years, and it's just nobody's ever done any development. So maybe everybody that's complaining here, we should all get together and talk about.
Well, and we did have a separate meeting where a lot of us here did have a conversation about that. And Bywater's whole thing is basically like, yeah, we'll do something once you figure out what's going to work for everybody and write like the perfect spec that meets everybody's needs, which is not typically a what I don't know. That seems hard to obtain, is that approach.
Yeah, we need something as easy as like on the libraries page in the admin console, just a box that says this library is closed, that just disables everything about that library, and maybe some controls about what everything means. So
I think something like this would be a good candidate for our next development project for koha-US.
Yeah. Now we're talking.
This has been avoided because a lot of the other countries don't care. But here in America, where we have seasonal libraries, it's like we need a way to be able to shut these down easily. And one of the comments Martha put on that bug is you have a checklist of things that you have to do in order to close down a library, and it would be nice if there was a better mechanism to schedule these things or do these things in.
Newbie question: does that hide the items under a record if you were to shut down a library?
No, if their items are if they're not going to be circling, then it just says not available.
Oh, I see. Okay. So there isn't a way to do that.
That's the problem, is there isn't an easy way to do all of these things. Like the school libraries that I closed for the summer, I go in and I put those locations. There's a system preference called OPAC hidden items. And when you add, it's a YAML interface, and you give it like a set of criteria over here, and then you put the variables over here, and it says home library equals these locations, and they're hidden from the OPAC. until you take them out of that system preference. And so I've got, like Martha says in her comment, wouldn't it be great if there was a checklist? I have a checklist. It's just all written down in a notebook. And there are certain steps, and you've got to go through each of these steps manually. And so that's what it'd be nice, is if there was a way to say, we want to do this and this and this with just a set of checkboxes on the library information. Because the way it is now is that there isn't a good way. I mean, there's only one thing you can really do where you can say this library is no longer a pickup location. That's the only thing we've really gotten along that far with. So.
Yeah, you can also turn off their holds at the circ rules, but then because it only looks at either, you have to pick, do you want it to look at the items or the patrons? That's what I was talking about earlier. You either have a situation where other libraries can still request their items, or patrons of that library can still request other items from another library. So that becomes a bit of an issue too. Okay, well, I think we're a little past time, so thank you for all for the discussion. We will be meeting again. Well, our normally scheduled time happens to coincide, I think, with the koha-US of Kansas. So that's what we'll be. So we'll be having our meeting during the koha-US. So if you haven't signed up for that in person or online, I recommend you do so. If you save the chat, there'll be links to the schedule and stuff like that.
You don't have a meeting in August?
Let me.
I think
No, this group is every other month.
It's every other, yeah. So
Okay.
it times out well. We used to do this every month, but it was a lot of Jason and I having 10-minute conversations and then bidding each other adieu. So
And then I'd show up in the last minute and go, oh shit, I read the calendar wrong because of the time zones. I did that at least twice with this group. It's like you show up like a minute after it ends.
Yeah, Bob, thanks for spelling out all the time zones on your
yeah,
announcement. That was helpful.
That's as much for me as it is for anybody else.